At school, children need a learning environment that is aware of discrimination. According to the Berlin Education School Act, schools are obliged to protect pupils from discrimination. Every young person has a right to a sustainable, non-discriminatory education and upbringing at school, regardless of, for example, disability, ethnic origin, gender, sexual orientation, or religious beliefs. At the same time, school is not a place free of discrimination.
Ultimately, it must be said quite clearly, discrimination takes place in every school. Because discrimination is part of our society, and since schools are the magnifying glass of our society, ultimately also a part of every school culture. I find the term school without racism problematic anyway. There is no such school because there is no society without racism and discrimination. And that's why it would be a lie if I said, there is no racism here at our school. It definitely exists. But I have to say, we have a very active anti-racism working group of pupils who are very committed. For example, they set up a consultation hour after we had an incident here. Our school management dealt with it very openly. Racism at school means that not only students, but also teachers are not just systematically excluded because of their origin or skin colour, but are actually discriminated against. This is a socially difficult moment, especially in the focus school, because it is very difficult for students to find a way out. And this situation can also be very stressful for teachers before they turn to anyone.
Schwer einen Ausweg finden und auch für Lehrkräfte diese Situation sehr, sehr belastend werden kann, bevor sie sich überhaupt an jemanden wenden.
What can parent representatives do?
We actually have a lot of parent representatives contacting us and reporting cases or wanting advice on how to proceed. And that is the first step, namely to be attentive and have an open ear, even if you are not personally affected. Sometimes it's not so easy to be aware of this. Otherwise, you can of course always contact us, and the way forward could be to show solidarity with the parents on the one hand, and perhaps also to seek a joint discussion with the school on the other hand, in order to support the parents.
Und dann eventuell auch das Gespräch mit der Schule gemeinsam sucht, da die Eltern zu unterstützen.
What happens if it is not your own child who is affected, but another one?
If you notice that a child who is not your child is affected by marginalization and discrimination, or a child in your presence is affected by this, you should first ask the child whether there is anything you can do. Then you should try to make contact with the child's parents. You should also tell the teacher that you have observed something that concerns the issue of marginalization and that this is not okay. If this conflict or your observation cannot be resolved to your satisfaction, then it is important that you speak to the parents' representatives and try to call a parents' evening to address this issue in a broader context.
Dann ist es natürlich wichtig, dass man dann die Elternvertreterinnen anspricht, anschreibt und versucht, einen Elternabend einzuberufen, der in einem erweiterten Rahmen sich dieser Thematik sozusagen widmet.
Parents can address their concerns to the teacher and the parent representatives at class level. From there, the problem can be discussed further in committees, such as the Parents' Council, in order to find a solution at school level. How can parents promote a non-discriminatory school climate?
It is not always easy for parents to notice this because students often do not talk about it, either out of shame or because they do not want to burden their parents. That's why it's particularly important that parents are very vigilant. Even with small things that come up, such as when a pupil feels excluded, no longer likes going to school, or their grades suddenly get significantly worse, it's important to ask questions and listen carefully. Here's a tip. It is also helpful to build up a relationship with your child's classmates and perhaps invite them over. That always helps to get a good insight.
Das hilft immer, auch da einen guten Einblick zu haben.
Und für Eltern,
It is important for parents to be attentive and listen first. I think that in addition to the experience of marginalization, not being able to talk about it is a big problem for students. Parents shouldn't repeat that. If they play it down, if they say, "Oh, maybe you misunderstood," there can be various reasons why parents do that. It might hurt them too. That can also be the case. But I think what's most important is to be attentive and listen.
das machen, weil ihnen das vielleicht auch wehtut. Das kann ja auch sein. Aber ich denke, das ist erstmal wichtig, aufmerksam zu sein, zuzuhören.
What possibilities are there to avoid marginalization and discrimination among pupils?
If conflicts arise, parents should try to find a direct way to talk to the class teacher, the educators, and perhaps also to the class's social workers. In other words, to all those involved in the school to find out first, what is the problem? Has it already been recognised? How is the school dealing with it? In other words, to start seeking direct contact with those responsible for the class.
It is important that parent representatives build a good relationship with all groups at the school. We sometimes experience at schools, whether in New Cologne or Grützburg, for example, that there may be a white parent representative who doesn't know how Black children or people with an international family history feel, what their needs are, and what discrimination they experience. So the first thing would be to have good contact with them. Otherwise, of course, the issue of discrimination should be made public at the school, workshops, project days, exam days, and so on should be established.
Auf die Agenda zu setzen, Workshops, Projekttage, Klausurtage und so weiter dazu zu etablieren.
Natürlich gibt es in jeder Schule.
Of course, there are different types of incidents in every school in Berlin. I have also experienced this in schools. Fortunately, I've been able to see that the school has reacted, that the school has set up anti-violence prevention programs, tried to find solutions in the classroom, and brought in external experts. Unfortunately, this cannot be taken for granted. We parents should also push for this if we have the impression that something needs to be done at school to prevent such situations.
Aber sollte wirklich auch von uns Eltern forciert werden, wenn wir den Eindruck haben, an der Schule muss etwas getan werden, solchen Situationen vorzubeugen.
If there is discrimination among students, parents are often not sufficiently informed about how they can react. Open and low-threshold participation opportunities for parents at school offer an opportunity to participate in their children's everyday school life and to remain in dialogue with them in order to avoid exclusion. This includes parents' evenings and parent-teacher meetings. In addition, awareness-raising workshops for children and parents alike can help to prevent discrimination. Which counselling centres can I turn to, for example? The Contact Point for Protection Against Discrimination in Schools. The Contact and Specialist Centre for Protection Against Discrimination at Schools and Daycare Centres in Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg. The Contact and Specialist Centre for Protection Against Discrimination in Schools, Lichtenberg. The Turkish Parents Association, Berlin-Brandenburg. Each One, Teach One. Anti-discrimination counselling for Black, African and Afro-diasporic people in Berlin. The State Office for Equal Treatment Against Discrimination.